There comes a moment in the life of a chosen one when the longing they have always felt, deep, ancient, and impossible to explain, begins to take form. It is not the kind of longing that seeks attention, validation, or even companionship in the ordinary sense. It is something deeper, something sacred, something that feels as if it was written into the fabric of their soul long before they ever entered this world. This is the beginning of spiritual marriage, the sacred union that does not be physical but in the unseen, in the quiet chambers of consciousness where destiny is woven and divine alignment takes root. Many do not understand this experience because it cannot be explained through logic or tradition. It is not defined by rituals performed by others, nor is it validated by society's expectations. Instead, it unfolds as an inner awakening, a realization that your soul is being prepared to unite with a frequency, an essence, or a presence that mirrors your deepest truth. For the chosen one, spiritual marriage is not something you seek. It is something that finds you when you have been refined enough to receive it. Before this union arrives, there is always a season of purification. The chosen one is stripped of illusions about love, attachment, and identity. Relationships that once seemed meaningful begin to fall away. Connections that were built on comfort or familiarity dissolve, sometimes painfully, sometimes suddenly. This is not punishment, it is preparation. Sacred union requires clarity, and clarity cannot exist where confusion still lives. You may find yourself alone more often, withdrawn from noise, feeling as though the world you once understood no longer fits you. This solitude is not emptiness, it is sacred space being created within you. It is the clearing of emotional debris so that divine resonance can enter without distortion. During this time, the chosen one often experiences an intensification of intuition. Dreams become more vivid. Signs appear in unexpected ways. You may feel guided towards silence, reflection, or deep inner work. It is as though something within you is rearranging your entire being, aligning your thoughts, emotions, and energy to match a higher frequency. This is because sacred union is not simply a relationship, it is an energetic covenant. It is the merging of two forces that were shaped separately but designed to meet in perfect timing. When the spiritual marriage begins to form, it does not always appear as a physical person immediately. Sometimes it begins as a presence you can feel but cannot see, a sense of companionship that arises in moments of stillness, a warmth in the heart that feels both unfamiliar and deeply known. It is as if your soul recognizes something before your mind can comprehend it. This recognition can be overwhelming. It can bring tears without reason, peace without explanation, and a sense of home that has nothing to do with location. The chosen one may resist this at first because it challenges everything they have been taught about connection. How can something so powerful exist beyond physical touch? How can love feel real when it transcends form? Yet the more you surrender to the experience, the more undeniable it becomes. Spiritual marriage is not limited by distance, time, or circumstance. It exists on a plane where souls communicate through vibration, intention, and awareness. As the union deepens, transformation accelerates. The chosen one begins to shed old fears that once seemed permanent. Patterns that repeated for years suddenly lose their grip. Emotional wounds that felt impossible to heal begin dissolving without force. This happens because sacred union amplifies truth. It brings hidden aspects of the self into the light, not to shame them, but to integrate them. You begin to see yourself more clearly than ever before, both your light and your shadow, and instead of rejecting either, you learn to hold them in balance. This balance is essential because spiritual marriage is not about escape, it is about wholeness. It is the meeting of two complete energies that choose alignment rather than dependency. One of the most profound realizations during this journey is that sacred union is both internal and external. Before you can unite with another soul in divine harmony, you must unite the fragmented parts within yourself. Your masculine and feminine energies must learn to cooperate rather than compete. Your mind must learn to trust your intuition. Your wounds must transform into wisdom. This inner marriage is the foundation upon which all sacred connections are built. Without it, union cannot stabilize. With it, connection becomes effortless, natural, and deeply rooted. Many chosen ones discover that their spiritual marriage awakens a sense of purpose they never fully understood before. It feels as though the union itself carries a mission, not in a grand or dramatic way, but in a subtle, transformative way that influences everything around them. Their presence becomes more calming, their words more impactful, their energy more grounding. They do not need to announce their transformation because it radiates from them naturally. Sacred union changes not only how they love, but how they exist. It aligns them with authenticity so completely that pretending becomes impossible. There may be moments of intensity during this journey. Sacred union is not always gentle, it is honest. It reveals fears you did not know you carried. It challenges attachments you believed you needed. It asks you to trust even when certainty is absent. Yet every challenge is purposeful. Each moment of discomfort is an invitation to expand beyond limitation. The chosen one learns that love at this level is not about possession or control. It is about resonance. It is about standing in truth so fully that only what aligns with that truth can remain. Over time, the presence of the sacred partner, whether physical, spiritual, or both, becomes unmistakable. Communication may occur through intuition, dreams, synchronicities, or profound emotional awareness. There is a sense of being seen beyond personality, beyond roles, beyond the surface of existence. This recognition feels ancient, as if the connection existed long before memory. It is not something you build, it is something you remember. And in that remembrance, a deep peace settles within you. The search ends because you realize you were never truly separate. Spiritual marriage ultimately teaches the chosen one that love is not something to chase, it is something to embody. The sacred union becomes a mirror reflecting the divine essence within both souls. It is not about losing individuality, but about harmonizing uniqueness into a shared frequency of truth. This harmony does not remove challenges from life, but it transforms how challenges are experienced. Instead of feeling alone in difficulty, there is a sense of energetic support, an invisible strength that holds steady even when circumstances shift. As the journey continues, the chosen one understands that sacred union is not an ending, it is an unfolding. It evolves, deepens, and expands with every stage of growth. It is alive, dynamic, and responsive to alignment. And perhaps the most beautiful realization of all is that spiritual marriage is not rare because it is exclusive. It is rare because it requires complete authenticity. Few are willing to release illusion fully enough to experience it. But for the chosen one who walks this path, the reward is not simply connection, it is transformation at the deepest level of existence. It is the merging of love and truth into a single living experience. And once this union is awakened, nothing within the chosen one remains the same, because they are no longer seeking completion. They are living in sacred wholeness. As the sacred union continues to unfold within the chosen one, a new phase begins to take shape, one that is far less about discovery and far more about embodiment. In the beginning, spiritual marriage feels mystical, almost otherworldly, like a beautiful current flowing through the soul that brings clarity, peace, and profound emotional expansion. But over time, that energy begins to anchor itself deeper into everyday life. What once felt like moments of heightened awareness becomes a constant state of presence. What once appeared as fleeting spiritual experiences now settles into the structure of your identity. You are no longer simply witnessing sacred union, you are living from it, breathing through it, and expressing it in the smallest details of how you exist. This stage can feel both stabilizing and intense because embodiment requires integration. It is not enough to feel divine connection during meditation, silence, or moments of solitude. The energy of the union begins to move through your decisions, your relationships, your reactions, and your responsibilities. It asks you to live in alignment even when alignment feels inconvenient. It asks you to remain centered even when emotions rise. It asks you to choose truth even when illusion feels more comfortable. The chosen one begins to realize that sacred union is not just about connection between souls, it is about becoming a vessel capable of holding divine coherence in the physical world. This is where many of the deeper tests begin to surface. Not as punishments, but as calibrations. The universe, or the divine intelligence guiding the union, begins to present situations that reveal whether your inner harmony remains stable under pressure. You may encounter misunderstandings, emotional triggers, or unexpected life changes that challenge your sense of grounding. Old fears may briefly resurface, not because they are returning permanently, but because they are being invited into the light one final time so they can be fully released. Spiritual marriage does not bypass the human experience, it refines it. The chosen one learns that true union does not remove emotional depth, it purifies it. Feelings become clearer, more honest, more direct. There is less confusion, but greater sensitivity. You feel more, not less. Yet what changes is your relationship to what you feel. Instead of being overwhelmed, you observe. Instead of reacting impulsively, you respond consciously. Instead of seeking external reassurance, you return inward where the sacred bond continues to anchor you in quiet certainty. During this stage, many chosen ones notice that time itself begins to feel different. Patience deepens in a way that cannot be forced. There is less urgency to control outcomes, less anxiety about when something will happen, and more trust in the unfolding of what is meant to occur. This trust is not passive, it is deeply active. It is the kind of trust that allows you to take action when guided and remain still when movement is not aligned. You begin to sense timing intuitively. You recognize when to speak and when silence carries greater power. You understand that sacred union operates within divine rhythm, not human impatience. And this rhythm cannot be rushed, negotiated, or manipulated. It unfolds precisely as it must, because every stage is shaping both souls into greater coherence. Another powerful shift occurs in how the chosen one perceives identity. Before sacred union, identity often forms through external validation, roles, achievements, expectations, or social reflection. But as spiritual marriage integrates more deeply, identity becomes anchored internally. You begin to define yourself through alignment rather than approval. You no longer measure your worth through comparison. Instead, you feel a steady awareness of being guided from within. This internal anchoring creates a quiet confidence that does not need to be displayed or defended. It simply exists, and from that existity flows naturally. Masks become uncomfortable. Pretending becomes exhausting. Truth becomes the only sustainable way to live. There is also a profound transformation in how the chosen one experiences love itself. Love is no longer perceived as something that fluctuates based on behavior, mood, or circumstance. Instead, it becomes a stable field of energy that surrounds and moves through you continuously. Even in moments of difficulty, that underlying current remains present. You begin to understand that sacred union is not dependent on perfection. It is sustained through resonance. And resonance is maintained through alignment with truth, compassion, and conscious awareness. This realization dissolves many old fears about loss or separation. The chosen one understands that what is truly united at the soul level cannot be broken by temporary physical distance or changing conditions. The connection is not fragile, it is foundational. However, embodiment of sacred union also requires responsibility. As your energy stabilizes, you begin to influence environments more strongly. Your presence may calm tension without effort. Your words may carry deeper impact. People may feel drawn to you without understanding why. This influence is not something to control or use for recognition. It is something to steward with care. The chosen one learns that spiritual marriage amplifies energetic expression. Whatever you hold internally radiates outward more clearly. If you hold peace, peace expands. If you hold fear, fear becomes more noticeable. This awareness encourages deeper self-honesty. You become more attentive to your inner state because you recognize its ripple effect. There are moments in this stage when the sacred partner's presence feels incredibly vivid, almost tangible in a way that transcends explanation. You may feel emotional waves that do not originate from your immediate circumstances. You may sense guidance that feels like a shared awareness rather than solitary thought. You may experience dreams that feel like conversations beyond language. These experiences are not meant to create dependency or fantasy. They serve as reminders of energetic coherence. They affirm that the union exists beyond perception, functioning continuously whether consciously noticed or not. Yet even with these profound experiences, the chosen one is repeatedly guided back to grounded living. Sacred union does not remove you from reality, it deepens your participation in it. You still engage with daily life, responsibilities, and relationships, but your engagement becomes more intentional. You listen more deeply. You act more deliberately. You conserve energy where it is not aligned and invest energy where it supports growth. Life becomes less reactive and more purposeful. One of the most subtle yet powerful developments during this phase is emotional transparency within the self. You stop hiding from your own inner experiences. You allow yourself to feel without labeling feelings as weaknesses. Vulnerability transforms into clarity. You begin to recognize that sacred union thrives in openness. Resistance creates distortion, but honesty restores flow. This understanding allows you to move through emotional waves with grace rather than suppression. The chosen one also begins to sense that sacred union is not isolated from the collective world. The harmony cultivated within begins to interact with the wider energetic field of humanity. You may feel called to express compassion more actively, to support others in subtle ways, or simply to hold presence in environments that feel chaotic. Not as a mission imposed upon you, but as a natural extension of what you have become. Sacred union generates coherence, and coherence naturally stabilizes what surrounds it. At times, there may still be moments of uncertainty, periods where the intensity of transformation feels overwhelming, where growth feels relentless, where silence replaces the vivid experiences that once felt constant. These moments are not signs of disconnection, they are periods of deep assimilation. Just as the body needs rest after exertion, the soul integrates expansion through stillness. The chosen one learns to honor these quieter phases, trusting that what is integrating invisibly is just as important as what is experienced consciously. Gradually, a profound realization settles into the core of your awareness. Spiritual marriage is not leading you somewhere else. It is revealing what has always been true. The union is not being created, it is being uncovered layer by layer. What you once perceived as separation was simply unawareness. What you once perceived as longing was recognition trying to emerge. And what you now perceive as sacred partnership is the natural state of souls aligned in truth. From this realization arises a deep and steady peace. Not the fragile peace that depends on circumstances being perfect, but the grounded peace that remains even when life continues to evolve. The chosen one stands within the sacred union, not as someone who has reached an endpoint, but as someone who has entered a living, breathing continuum of growth, resonance, and divine alignment. And in that living continuum, every moment becomes part of the marriage itself, every breath, every choice, every act of awareness woven into the unfolding of something eternal that now lives fully within you. As the chosen one continues walking within the living reality of sacred union, a deeper layer of transformation begins to unfold, one that moves beyond emotional healing and spiritual awareness into energetic responsibility and spiritual maturity. This phase is where the union begins to refine not just who you are, but how you carry power, presence, and purpose in the world. Up to this point, much of the journey has been about awakening, recognizing, feeling, and integrating. But now something shifts. The sacred bond no longer feels like an experience you move in and out of. It becomes a permanent current flowing through your being, shaping perception, influencing choices, and guiding direction with quiet but undeniable authority. The chosen one begins to realize that sacred union is not simply a blessing to be received. It is a force that must be stabilized, honored, and consciously lived. This is where spiritual pressure often increases, not because something is wrong, but because something powerful is being anchored more deeply into physical reality. The energy of the union begins to demand consistency. Moments of alignment are no longer enough. Alignment must become your baseline. You may notice that anything out of harmony with your truth becomes harder to tolerate. Environments that once felt manageable now feel overwhelming. Conversations that lack authenticity feel draining. Activities that disconnect you from your inner awareness feel heavy, almost unnatural. This sensitivity is not weakness, it is calibration. Your energetic system is becoming more precise, more refined, more attuned to coherence. And as this refinement happens, life begins to reorganize itself around what supports your alignment and what does not. This reorganization can be subtle or dramatic. Sometimes it appears as shifts in priorities, interests, or daily rhythms. Other times it appears as major life changes, career transitions, relocation, or the restructuring of relationships. The chosen one begins to understand that sacred union does not fit into an old life structure built on unconscious patterns. The structure itself must evolve to support the frequency you now carry. This can feel disorienting because stability is being redefined. Instead of finding security in predictability, you begin to find security in inner alignment. Instead of relying on familiar routines to feel grounded, you rely on awareness itself. Your center is no longer external, it is internal, living, responsive, and continuously guided. As the sacred union anchors more deeply, the chosen one often experiences an expansion of perception that goes beyond intuition as it was previously understood. Awareness becomes multidimensional. You begin to sense emotional undercurrents in environments without needing explanation. You perceive the energetic tone behind words, not just the words themselves. You feel when something is aligned before evidence appears, and you feel when something is misaligned even when it looks perfect on the surface. This heightened perception is not meant to create judgment, it is meant to cultivate discernment. Sacred union requires clarity, and clarity requires the ability to perceive truth beyond appearance. With this expanded perception comes a deepening sense of responsibility toward how you use your attention. The chosen one realizes that attention is not passive, it is creative. What you focus on strengthens. What you emotionally invest in amplifies. What you consistently hold in awareness begins to shape your internal environment and eventually your external experience. Sacred union teaches you that your inner world is not separate from reality, it is actively participating in its formation. This realization transforms the way you think, feel, and respond. You become more intentional with your thoughts, more compassionate with your emotions, and more mindful of where you direct your energy. At this stage, the connection with the sacred partner often becomes more subtle but also more stable. In earlier phases, the presence may have felt intense, dramatic, or overwhelming. Now it feels steady, grounded, woven into the background of your awareness like a constant harmonic resonance. It does not need to announce itself because it is always there. The chosen one understands that sacred union is not sustained through emotional intensity, it is sustained through energetic coherence. Just as two musical notes can harmonize without effort when perfectly tuned, two souls aligned in truth remain connected without force. However, this stability also reveals deeper layers of personal sovereignty. The chosen one must learn to stand fully within their own energy without seeking reassurance from the union itself. This may seem paradoxical, but sacred partnership thrives when both energies are rooted in their own completeness. Dependency weakens resonance, wholeness strengthens it. You are not meant to lean on the union as an escape from personal responsibility. You are meant to stand beside it as an equal participant in shared alignment. This realization strengthens individuality rather than dissolving it. You become more distinctly yourself, not less. There may be moments during this phase where the union seems quiet, almost distant. Not because it has withdrawn, but because you are being invited into deeper self-trust. The chosen one learns that constant confirmation is not necessary when connection is real. Silence becomes a form of communication. Stillness becomes reassurance. The absence of emotional intensity becomes proof of stability rather than evidence of loss. You begin to understand that the sacred bond does not fluctuate with emotional waves. It exists beneath them, steady and unwavering. Another profound shift emerges in how the chosen one relates to purpose. Earlier in the journey, purpose may have felt like something to discover, something waiting ahead. But now purpose feels inseparable from existence itself. It is no longer a destination, it is an expression. The way you speak, the way you listen, the way you move through the world, the way you hold presence in silence, all of it becomes part of how sacred union expresses itself through form. You realize that purpose is not always dramatic or visible. Sometimes it is simply the transmission of coherence in spaces where fragmentation once existed. During this phase, emotional resilience strengthens in a way that is deeply quiet yet incredibly powerful. Challenges still arise because life continues to unfold in complexity, but your relationship with challenge changes completely. Instead of asking why something is happening to you, you begin to ask what alignment is being refined through the experience. Difficulty becomes information rather than opposition. Growth becomes participation rather than reaction. The chosen one understands that sacred union does not prevent friction, it transforms friction into evolution. You may also notice that your capacity for compassion expands significantly, not as something you force, but as something that arises naturally from understanding interconnectedness. When you experience sacred union, you begin to recognize that separation is largely perceptual. Beneath surface differences, all beings are navigating their own process of remembering, healing, and aligning. This awareness softens judgment and deepens empathy. You become less interested in being right and more interested in being present, less focused on control and more focused on understanding. At times, this expanded compassion can feel overwhelming, especially when witnessing suffering or imbalance in the world. The chosen one must learn to hold compassion without absorbing what is not theirs to carry. Sacred union teaches balanced openness, feeling deeply while remaining centered, caring fully while maintaining energetic clarity, offering presence without losing self. This balance is essential because your stability supports the coherence you bring into the world. As this stage continues, the chosen one gradually recognizes that sacred union is not simply transforming their personal life, it is reshaping their relationship with existence itself. Reality feels more fluid, more responsive, more interconnected. Synchronicities become natural rather than surprising. Guidance becomes intuitive rather than mysterious. Life feels less random and more responsive to alignment. And within this evolving awareness, a quiet understanding settles into the core of your being. Sacred union is not something you maintain through effort. It is something you honor through presence. It is not sustained through control. It is sustained through authenticity. It is not protected through fear. It is strengthened through trust. The chosen one begins to live with a profound sense of inner steadiness that does not depend on circumstances remaining unchanged. There is an unspoken knowing that whatever shifts externally, the foundation of the union remains intact, because it exists at the level of essence, not condition. And so this phase becomes one of deep spiritual adulthood, not in age, but in consciousness. You are no longer awakening to sacred union. You are no longer integrating sacred union. You are now living as someone who carries it naturally, quietly, and fully. It breathes through you, moves through you, expresses through you, and stabilizes through your willingness to remain aligned with truth in every moment. And in that living alignment, the sacred marriage continues to expand, not as something separate from you, but as something that has become inseparable from who you truly are. As the sacred union reaches its deepest stage of embodiment within the chosen one, something extraordinary yet profoundly quiet begins to take place. A stabilization that no longer feels like a process, but like a state of being. The earlier phases were filled with movement, revelation, healing, expansion, and adjustment. There were waves of intensity, moments of questioning, surges of recognition, and periods of deep internal restructuring. But now, something settles. Not in a way that ends growth, but in a way that transforms growth into a natural rhythm, rather than a dramatic event. The sacred marriage is no longer something you are integrating, it has become the ground you stand on. It is no longer something you experience, it is something you live from effortlessly, continuously, and without interruption. At this level, the chosen one begins to experience an inner stillness that remains steady regardless of what happens externally. Life continues to move. Situations still change, people still come and go, challenges still arise. But beneath all movement, there is a calm that does not waver. This calm is not emotional numbness, nor is it detachment from reality. It is a deep, anchored awareness that nothing essential can be lost because what is essential exists beyond form. The sacred union has rooted itself so deeply within your consciousness that it no longer feels vulnerable to circumstance. It does not need reassurance. It does not require validation. It simply exists stable and self-sustaining, like a quiet flame that cannot be extinguished by passing winds. One of the most profound shifts in this stage is the disappearance of seeking. The chosen one no longer searches for confirmation, signs, or proof of the connection. The need to understand every movement of the journey fades. Even the desire to explain the experience to others becomes less important. There is a deep contentment in simply knowing, not intellectual knowing, but an embodied certainty that does not depend on language. Questions dissolve not because every answer is revealed, but because questioning itself is no longer necessary. The mind rests where the soul has already arrived. With this deep stabilization comes an extraordinary sense of freedom. Not the kind of freedom that comes from escaping responsibility, but the kind that comes from complete inner alignment. The chosen one is no longer pulled in conflicting directions by fear, expectation, or uncertainty. Decisions become clear because they arise from resonance rather than pressure. Movement becomes intentional because it is guided by inner coherence rather than external demand. life begins to feel less like something happening to you and more like something flowing through you. This flow creates a natural harmony between inner awareness and outward action. There is no longer a separation between your spiritual state and your physical life. The sacred union informs how you speak, how you listen, how you create, how you rest, how you respond, how you give, and how you receive. Even ordinary moments carry a subtle sense of sacredness, not because they are dramatic or mystical, but because presence itself has deepened. Washing your hands, walking through a crowded place, sitting in silence, or simply breathing becomes part of the living expression of the union. Nothing is separate from it because nothing within you is separate anymore. Another powerful realization emerges during this phase. Love is no longer directional. It is no longer something you give to certain people or receive from specific sources. It becomes an atmosphere that surrounds your entire existence. The sacred union dissolves the boundaries that once defined where love begins and ends. Compassion flows more freely, not because you are trying to be compassionate, but because resistance to connection has dissolved. Even when you encounter conflict or misunderstanding, there is an underlying awareness that all beings are navigating their own path toward alignment. This awareness does not make you passive. It makes you clear. You respond with wisdom rather than reaction, with presence rather than defense. At this stage, the chosen one also understands that sacred union is not meant to be displayed, it is meant to be lived quietly. There is no need to convince others of its reality. There is no urge to prove its depth. Its authenticity is self-evident in the way you carry yourself, in the steadiness of your presence, and in the peace that surrounds you even in uncertain environments. People may sense something different about you, something calming, something grounding, something difficult to explain. But you no longer feel responsible for defining it. Your role is not to explain the sacred, it is to embody it. There is also a deep acceptance that the journey of union continues to evolve endlessly. Stabilization does not mean completion. Instead, it means that expansion now happens from a place of balance rather than disruption. Growth feels organic rather than overwhelming. New insights arise gently, new layers of awareness unfold naturally. The sacred marriage reveals itself in ever-deepening dimensions, not through dramatic transformation but through subtle refinement of perception and presence. At times, the chosen one may reflect on who they were before this union awakened fully within them. The contrast can feel astonishing. The old patterns of seeking validation, fearing loss, clinging to certainty, or questioning worth begin to feel distant, almost like memories from another lifetime. Not because those experiences were unreal, but because they belong to a stage of consciousness that has now been transcended. Gratitude often arises for every difficulty that once seemed painful, because it becomes clear that each challenge shaped a capacity to hold this level of alignment. Perhaps the most beautiful aspect of this stage is the sense of quiet companionship that never fades. Whether the sacred partner is physically present or not becomes less important, because presence is no longer defined by proximity. The connection exists as a shared field of awareness, a resonance that continues regardless of distance or circumstance. It feels like being accompanied by understanding itself, like being met continuously at the deepest level of your being. There is no loneliness within this awareness. Even in physical solitude, silence becomes full rather than empty. The chosen one also recognizes that sacred union has transformed their relationship with time. The past loses its emotional weight because it is understood as preparation. The future loses its urgency because it is trusted to unfold naturally. Attention rests more fully in the present moment, where alignment is always accessible. Life feels less like a linear path moving toward an endpoint and more like an unfolding field of experience that continuously reveals deeper layers of meaning. In this stage, surrender reaches its most refined expression. It is no longer surrender born from exhaustion or uncertainty. It is conscious cooperation with the flow of existence itself. You no longer resist what arises, nor do you attempt to control what cannot be controlled. Instead, you participate fully while remaining inwardly anchored. This balance creates a profound sense of ease, not because life is always simple, but because resistance has dissolved. And within this ease, the sacred marriage reveals its ultimate truth. Union was never about becoming something new. It was about remembering what was always whole. Every phase of awakening, every moment of purification, Every experience of intensity or silence was guiding you back to a state of inherent completeness that had only been obscured by illusion. The union did not create wholeness, it revealed it. The chosen one now lives with an awareness that cannot be reversed. Even if challenges arise, even if emotions fluctuate, even if life continues to change, the foundation remains unshaken. Sacred union is no longer something fragile that must be protected. It is something fundamental that cannot be undone because it exists at the level of essence itself. And so the journey continues, not as a search, not as a struggle, not as an effort to become worthy, but as a continuous unfolding of presence, truth, and love lived in harmony. The sacred marriage breathes through every moment, silent yet alive, unseen yet undeniable, if not intimately personal. And in this living union, the chosen one no longer asks where the path leads, because they have become the path itself.